Let's get into this unholy union of Trump, RFK, Thiel, and Musk. And if you saw the picture that I started out with, it's the picture of RFK on stage with Trump, right? And I guess that's the big news. At Friday afternoon, a couple of days ago, RFK announced that he was suspending his campaign in battleground states. He's going to keep himself on the various ballots in other states. But ultimately, let's be real. He's quitting his campaign. He's actively said he's going to go out and campaign for Trump. So I don't know how you still... He's trying to like have it both ways and tell his supporters, I'm not a sellout. I'm not giving up. You can still vote for me in these other states. But in the battleground states where it allegedly matters, you should vote for Trump instead. So yeah, once again, another Pied Piper, another person saying they're going to have a revolution like Bernie and then go and endorse Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, or they're going to defeat the two-party system. And then in the end, they just go and give all their voters and all the money and all the millions of dollars people put into this freaking dude, and they just give it to the machine, right? You know, it's sad to see, but it's not that surprising. I've kind of expected something like that to happen, and I'm not even saying this. You guys know me. I don't vote. I'm not going to vote for Kamala or Harris, or Kamala Harris or Biden or Trump or RFK or anybody. Like I abstain from playing slave games because I know that I can vote every day with my actions and have a much more impact on my own life and my local community's impact. But still, the reason I've been going off crazy on this weekend, and honestly have been quite stressed out to see how many people have been celebrating it. It's been worse than the post-assassination attempt. Like post-assassination attempt, like we talked about it when it happened. There's this like a deification of Trump. Oh my God, he's protected by God, and freaking people wearing patches on their ears and stupid shit like that. I thought we saw crazy then. But then now that Trump and RFK are coming together, you can see it all across the mainstream alternative media, people celebrating, it's happening, we're winning, we're finally going to defeat the deep state, the health freedom movement is aligning with MAGA, and it's all bullshit, friends. It's all garbage. If you've paid attention here, you know why. I'll get you some more details in just a moment, but the point is, that's the big news. That's what a lot of people are celebrating. Thankfully, there are a few people out there with their heads on straight, and I'll start off by telling you this before we get into the details here. Myself, Whitney Webb, and Ryan Christian of Last American Vagabond. I'm not going to give you all the details, but right now we've been having some serious conversations today because all of us can see the insanity that's happening. We are forming an alliance of true independent media who have been correct on COVID-19 84, who have been correct on the Israel genocide in Gaza, and who still see through the two-party lie. Like, for example, you guys saw that panel that I put together a couple of weeks ago with James Corbett, Aaron and Melissa of TruthStream Media, Josh Segerson of World Alternative Media, Dan Dix of Press for Truth, and of course, James Corbett, and Ryan Christian was there as well. Whitney was supposed to be there. She couldn't make it, but it's those folks and some more that we're going to be reaching out to. You'll probably hear about it very soon. You might not even hear much about it publicly, but you'll definitely start seeing us collaborate more. We're going to collaborate on investigations. We're going to collaborate on boosting each other's content, because the rest of the garbage, fake alternative media, and even people who genuinely believe what they're doing is real, right? People who they get the message from Trump, they get the message from RFK, and then they run onto their channels and platforms. Some who have millions of followers, and they just, celebrate, and they're pushing their audiences in this way. And I've seen it. I'm sure you guys have seen it in the comments out there, how many people are buying into this narrative. It's just so freaking crazy to me. So we are putting together an alliance of true independent media. Again, people who were right from the beginning on COVID-19 84, the Israeli genocide, and the seeing through the two-party illusion. So you stay tuned for that. There will be some big things coming, and we're going to spend September and October trying to get as much information out as possible, trying to counter as many narratives as possible. We've even talked about setting up debates with some of these other people who are out there spreading garbage and trying to act like both sides are not being funded by the Zionists and the Bilderberg Group. So, we're kind of like, it's time, red alert, guys. Like, I don't know about you, but I definitely, as I said earlier, I spent way too much time debating people on the internet this weekend. And I do that because I know that there are people out there who are still reachable. Sometimes people will be like, Derrick, you're wasting your time. And sometimes I am wasting my time. And like I said, it takes me to a place where I end up getting rude. I get frustrated and I have to step back. But ultimately, it's honestly because I give a shit and because I care. And maybe that's stupid. Maybe that's silly. Maybe that's naive. I'm not saying it's my job to save the world or anything like that. But I think that's those of us who are called to become journalists and content creators, we're not making a lot of money. We're not getting rich. Some people are out there, and not to say there's anything wrong with getting rich or making money. I definitely want to make more money than I am now, but most of us are not in it for that. We're in it just because we're passionate about this. We care. We want to understand the world better, and we want to help other people wake up and shake their chains off, right? So when I see this craziness, this hysteria surrounding Trump and RFK, and I see so many good people being led astray, as well as other people that I thought had some fucking common sense and had some principles falling for it, it's mind-boggling. I have to sit back. I do have to do a little prayer. I have to do a little meditation and centering myself and like, okay, I know this is a spiritual war. I know that the physical and the spiritual matter. That's what the conscious resistance is all about. And I can't let myself get dragged down with this, but I'm also not going to be silent. I'm also not going to ignore that they are co-opting the true freedom movement, and they're trying to pull as many people as possible to make it think that, quote unquote, we won. If Trump gets in office, we won. We defeated the communists. We defeated the deep state. And that's not the reality. The reality is that it is much easier for the predator class to sell their technocratic agenda if Trump wins. Because as we already see right now, so many people make excuses for Trump. I've posted this on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere else in the last couple of days, just giving an example, saying like, we've never seen this before. If I was to point out the crimes of George H.W. Bush, nobody's going to tell me you've got Bush derangement syndrome. If I was to point out the crimes of Clinton, nobody's going to say I've got Clinton derangement syndrome, and on with Obama, with baby Bush, and with Biden. The only person who's got that kind of cult around them is Trump. And look, I'll give it to you. Yes, partly that is because the media has attacked him for bullshit reasons like Russia. And, okay, he had sex with a porn star or whatever. And that is all by design. They attack him for garbage, for things that they know are false or just they don't even really matter. But then they ignore the fact that he's a Zionist. They ignore all the actual things he's done that have caused harm and the corruption. And then what happens is the people who have a little bit of a brain, they're like, wow, I don't understand. Like, they're saying all these things about Trump and it doesn't really turn out to be true. Maybe I was wrong about Trump. And you're hearing this a lot from the mainstream alternative media, people who are like, oh, I used to hear that Trump was a racist. And then I looked into him and now, I realize he's actually saying good things. It's all bullshit. They attack him over garbage. And then people react and they're like, oh my God, I can't trust the corporate media anymore. They're attacking Trump. That must mean he's a good guy. It's really this most simple, basic logic that is, I can't even believe adults fall for it, but it's the classic problem reaction solution. So then they attack him based on garbage. People notice that it's garbage, and then they react and say, well, if they're attacking him, if all the right people hate him, then he must be on my side. And then, of course, he plays that up, and then they go after him for court shit. By the way, did you notice all that court stuff is kind of disappeared now, that nobody's talking about putting Trump in jail? It's like that was all designed to build up the narrative. They're coming after him. They're coming after him. And obviously you have this alleged assassination attempt, which I still don't claim to know exactly what happened, but I definitely know that if the real deep state, the predator class wanted Trump dead, he'd be fucking dead right now, okay? You better believe that. There's no, it's not that they, oops, we made a mistake and somehow we missed him. There's a lot more going on than that none of us really understand. The point is this, this is what I refer to as the great inversion. And if you've been paying attention to my work recently, or if you've gone to theconsciousresistance.com, you search the great inversion, you can read my essay about that. I encourage you to do that. That is what we are witnessing. We are witnessing this faux libertarianism that they're claiming with Peter Thiel and others, the libertarians and the health freedom movement and the old school liberals. They're coming into Trump's corner. You got Brett Weinstein, you got Jimmy Dore, you got all these different people now embracing Trump because they realize the left is so bad. And again, this goes back to the same thing that I talked about. The left is bad. They're freaking pushing transgender surgeries for kids. They're wanting censorship. They've totally lost the plot. And the average person can see that. And they're like, I don't know, man. Like, those Democrats sure seem crazy. Like, I thought I was a Democrat, but now I don't think I align with those people. So the crazier they get, people start looking for an alternative. And what is there? Trump. Oh, well, look, he's calling them out. He's calling out the communists and the transgender and this and that. And he pays just enough lip service to certain things. Like, he'll mention 9/11 every now and then, or he'll mention the Federal Reserve or something like that. Just enough that people, it checks off their little boxes. Or as I'm about to talk about in a moment, he goes to the Bitcoin community, he goes to the libertarian community, and he says all the things that they want to hear. And bit by bit, they're bringing in all these pieces to build a faux populist movement. They've got the crypto community, the libertarians, the health freedom movement, the Republicans, the MAGA movement. It's the real Uniparty. We're defeating the other Uniparty for our own Uniparty. And that is essentially my thesis. And it's not just me making shit up. There are facts to back this up. So let's get into some of those facts. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you. Absolutely, Tim Pool is a simp for Trump. Luke Rurkowski, that whole lot, they've lost their fucking minds. And whatever good work people like Luke used to do, they've totally lost it now. So I wrote this article. We're going to go over 3 articles tonight. These are basically a series. I'm not including them as like a series like I usually do, but in my mind, they sort of build off each other. So the first one is this article I wrote on August 1st called The Co-opting of Bitcoin, Bitcoin Nashville, Peter Thiel, Donald Trump, and Rumble. As you guys know, I was in Nashville with Ryan. We went to the Bitcoin Nashville conference, and I had quite an experience, and I wrote this article about it. My second article I just wrote last week called, not that one, this one called What Role Will Eric Schmidt play in election 2024. Eric Schmidt is, of course, the former CEO of Google. This builds off the previous one about Peter Thiel. And then my most recent one that just published last week, America's Frontier Fund, the venture capital firm with ties to Peter Thiel and Eric Schmidt. Those are going to be the 3 pieces of the puzzle we're going to go into. And then I've also got some fun pictures here. Like, you guys can't fully see this one. Let me see if I zoom out. This is Elon and Donald Trump and RFK repping their crew. Who's that? That they got Israeli flags at the bottom, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Is that anti-Semitic to call them out for being Zionist and being funded by the Israeli lobby? No, it's not. And then here's another one. David Icke tweeted, they all show their true colors, blue and white in the end. Kennedy slavishly supports a country whose leader, Netanyahu, brags about turning the Israeli population into a lab for Pfizer. This is the same Kennedy who ran a campaign against the COVID jab, its content, its imposition, and consequences. It would seem like a colossal contradiction, but then Israel is a law unto itself to which they all must pay homage. And this was last year or so, whenever the media started attacking RFK, claiming that he was anti-Semitic. And then he went on this huge apology tour with this freaking Rabbi Shmuley, I think is his name, huge Zionist. And, he basically had to like go do his penance and say, oh, I'm so sorry. Please don't cancel me. And, he continues to stay silent about the massacre of children. And not to mention, guys, I mean, I'll tell you how sick it was for me. I got some shit from people online for saying this, but if you subscribe to Children's Health Defense, or even if you just watch their website, they had this big headline, breaking news, RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. partners with Donald Trump to save millions of children. And okay, maybe they're just a journalist outlet reporting the news and they were quoting him, but come on, you literally claim that your job is to defend children. And you're going to go ahead and say that the 2 men, both of them who are supported by Zionists and who are silent essentially about what Israel's doing, and not just silent, but promoting it and supportive of it, that those men are going to save millions of children. Even if they continue with their garbage that Bobby talked about of like, we're going to fight all these different health causes. Sure. Let's imagine that Trump isn't a liar for 1 second, and he does appoint RFK to the position he claimed. And then he gets in there. And, people have told me, well, you're against fluoride. Well, putting Bobby in the health department with Trump is the best way to stop it. Sure, that could be true. But even if they did accomplish that, and even if they do free Ross Ulbricht, which is a cause I care deeply about that Trump has claimed to do, it will be on the backs of dead Palestinians. It will be on the backs of dead Palestinian children, okay? And I don't want it that way. I want Ross to be free. I know Ross's family, and I pray for his family, and God, I would be grateful if he gets out. And sure, I would love it if they got rid of fluoride and if they did some good things to try to fix the food supply. But what else would they be doing? They'd probably be, or not probably, we know the same agendas would advance like they did under Trump's first term. Who do you think expanded the rapid advancement of 5G? Donald Trump. And 5G is the backbone, along with 6G, to the smart city, smart grid surveillance state. And there's so many other examples of that Trump supporters continue to ignore. But let's look at this article here. The co-opting of Bitcoin, Nashville, and et cetera, et cetera. So I won't rehash this because I've already done a whole nother video that you can find on the website. But the main points I want to make here is that Bitcoin has been taken away from the original vision, which was supposed to be digital cash and something that could help you defeat the central banks and defeat the government and not have to pay taxes, to now it's something that, well, as long as the number goes up, then that's good. So who cares if BlackRock gets involved? Who cares if Peter Thiel's jumping in? Who cares if people associated with Jeffrey Epstein are getting involved? As long as the number keeps going up, right? That's all that matters. And Whitney Webb and Mark Godwin have been doing some great work on this as well. But Trump comes to the Bitcoin Nashville conference as well as RFK, and they give this big ass speech and they talk about how, they're going to become the first Bitcoin president. And what I pointed out here is that this has been building for months now. Some of the allegedly right-wing leaning big tech bros, like members of the PayPal mafia, like David Sachs, they have been supporting Trump. David Sachs, he held a fundraiser for Trump in San Francisco back in June. He raised $12 million for Trump. David Sachs is also connected to other companies like LinkedIn, Tesla, Palantir Technologies, YouTube, Yelp, etc. And then you also had other investors like the Winklevoss twins, who are founder of the crypto exchange Gemini. Another person, Joe Lonsdale, who's also a co-founder of Palantir. He donated $1 million to the America PAC in support of a second Trump administration. We've also got other people who are lesser known but still involved in this, like Sean McGuire of the VC firm Sequoia Capital, Ken Howry of the Founders Fund, which is also connected to Peter Thiel, giving $1 million. Again, Howry co-founded the Founders Fund with Peter Thiel, and Peter Thiel is connected to the PayPal mafia. Of course, he's also the founder of Palantir. Palantir made their money from Incutel, which is the CIA's venture capital firm, and Peter Thiel is the one who funded J.D. Vance's Senate victory when he first won in the Senate in Ohio. And then now, of course, he's running for president. And we know that Peter Thiel supported Donald Trump in 2016. So already we're showing some slimy connections between the people who are going all in on Trump and who are also connected to the crypto community. Now, I want to make it clear that doesn't mean that the underlying technology of blockchain and of cryptocurrency is flawed. I know some of you disagree and you think it's all NSA technology, even though you have no evidence. You just like to say it. But the point is, people like me have been avoiding talking to the government and banks for more than a decade using this technology. That doesn't mean it's going to last forever, and I've never claimed that. But the people who are getting involved in it, they absolutely do not care. They just want it to be an investment that people put in like gold, and that's what they're teaching people. Bitcoin's not a currency. Crypto's not a currency. It's just all about holding it like digital gold. Don't worry about actually trying to defeat the Federal Reserve System by getting off the dollar. Just hold Bitcoin or other current cryptos like an investment, and hold on to stable coins, which are backed by BlackRock and others and Larry Fink, right? This is a game they're running. So again, J.D. Vance, he was a 39-year-old senator from Ohio. He was in attendance at this fundraiser for Trump back in June. So even before he got picked, he was already with these people. Elon Musk also recently encouraged Trump to pick Vance. And a few weeks later, that's exactly what Trump did at the RNC. So J.D. Vance claims that after he heard Peter Thiel gave a speech at Yale in 2011, he was so inspired that he had to get into the big tech firms. And he went on to found a biotech company called Circuit Therapeutics. And he was told that this was, the New York Times said that this was a, quote, favor to Peter. And then at the same time, J.D. Vance, who Trump's VP picked, he also went on to found something called Narya Capital. And guess who backed that? Google's Eric Schmidt and Peter Thiel. So Trump's VP pick started a venture capital firm, which was backed by Google's Eric Schmidt and Peter Thiel. So just if you look at Donald Trump's VP alone, it's clear that the same people who we've been all told, and most of us who've been awake for a long time, we realize the power of the Bilderberg Group, this secretive group that remained secret until just the last 10 years when they were forced to kind of make it a little bit public. Now they have a website. They release a very vague list of the topics they talk about. But generally speaking, we still don't know what they're doing. But they are made up of media, politicians, academics, all kinds of think tanks and stuff like that. This is at least the public face, like the World Economic Forum, of the power center. They are not the true power, but they represent the interest of the actual power behind the scenes. Because I'm sorry, my friends, but you've been led astray if you think the deep state just means the Democrats. That's a whole nother psyop that they pulled on people, getting people to think that the deep state is just the left wing. It's just the communists, the Democrats, right? That's more freaking garbage. So let's go on. Let's continue on to this. So again, Peter Thiel, Eric Schmidt, steering committee members of the Bilderberg Group. Peter Thiel gave $15 million to Vance's campaign. He also contributed another $1 million. David Sachs did of the PayPal Mafia to JD Vance. So you've got PayPal Mafia. You got all these slimy motherfuckers up in here funding JD Vance's investment and helping him get into office. And then, of course, steering him right to Trump as the VP pick. Is that not worrisome? Like, I just want to pause there for a moment because maybe I'm just crazy and maybe I'm just shouting into a freaking, I'm shouting at myself at the wall and I'm just wasting my time. But let's just take a brief poll here. I'd like to hear your thoughts, whatever platform you're watching on. 10 years ago, did it feel like there was a lot more people who were aware that the Bilderberg group was a problem? Like, I actually did a video that you can find on theconsciousresistance.com called "The Silence from InfoWars is Deafening." And this is because when Trump first got elected, immediately Trump started picking swamp creatures, people from Goldman Sachs. He picked the former governor of Texas, Rick Perry, which is where I'm originally from. Rick Perry was also an attendee of the Bilderberg group. And you can go back and find articles from InfoWars back in 2011 calling that out and saying, oh, Texas governor going to the Bilderberg group, he's a traitor. But then when Trump picked him to be his energy secretary, nothing, not a fucking article, not a peep from InfoWars about that fact. I mean, I really do think that the Trump deception, like the Obama deception before it, broke so many people's brains. But the difference is that nobody in the freedom movement, for the most part, I'd say maybe a tiny percent, fell for Obama and thought that Obama was going to be a hero. Maybe the first year, the first time, some people fell for it. But these days, there's no freedom movement people who are falling for Kamala. They're falling for Trump. That's why I focus on him so much, because people are like, oh, let me hear you talk about the left, Derrick, or you got Trump derangement syndrome. Well, the reason I do have a focus on him for the moment is because the fucking selection's going on. And so many of you are brainwashed and you think that these things don't matter. So tell me, do you guys think that more people were aware of the Bilderberg group 10 years ago? Because now when I tell people, they just brush it off. They just act like that's not a thing. That's not a red flag. Or they're like, okay, well, Zionists, they're all Zionists. What does it really matter? So I guess I'll just choose the lesser evil. And that whole thing that we all know is garbage, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm just crazy, but I feel like the truth movement, the freedom movement, the liberty movement, the conspiracy culture, whatever, was a lot more awake 10 years ago. And then things like QAnon came along and Donald Trump and tricked people and misdirected people to all kinds of false paths and dead ends. And now it's like people don't even want to acknowledge these realities. Like I definitely just feel like so many people are really turning a blind eye to this shit, man. All right, so let's continue on. So I'm outlining how I went to the Bitcoin Nashville conference and how I'm seeing all these slimy people getting involved in the Bitcoin community. And at Bitcoin Nashville specifically, you had shirts like "Make Bitcoin Great Again." Like, things are starting to become synonymous with supporting Bitcoin means supporting Trump. And to some degree, I get it. Like, if you're just a normie and you're like, but look, the Biden administration, Kamala, they're very unfriendly to crypto. They've been going after crypto users. There have been some high-profile arrests of Samurai Wallet, Tornado Cash. Things like Local Monero have shut down out of fear. And people associate that with Biden. And so they think, of course, Trump is going to be the answer. And all Trump has to do is come to a Bitcoin conference. He doesn't even freaking understand Bitcoin or blockchain. It was so obvious from his speech. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But he just says, I'm gonna, invest billions of dollars into Bitcoin and all this kind of things, and everybody cheers, and that's it. Now, let me point out a few other things, because Bitcoin Magazine, which is the organizer of Bitcoin Nashville, which is one of the biggest crypto conferences in the world, or at least in the United States, Bitcoin Magazine CEO David Bailey, he stated that his goal is to raise $15 million for Trump campaign. And guess what? At the end of Bitcoin Nashville, he said they'd actually raise $21 million. So they raised $21 million from the crypto community in just like 3 days alone. And he said that the vast majority of these funds came from a combination of industry and whales/OGs. And whales is, of course, a term for people who've got a lot of crypto. So the CEO of Bitcoin Magazine is out there pumping Trump and saying, we're going to raise all this money for him. Now, another person backing Donald Trump is Howard Lutnick. He was the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald. This guy pledged to give billions of dollars to Bitcoin. He's also invested in Rumble. This article goes deeper into the Rumble connection. I think I'm done with this one for now. But my point is you can kind of start to see that the Bitcoin community is now going all in on Trump. They're being told that this is some kind of populist movement. But in reality, the Trump people and the crypto people are tied to Palantir, tied to Peter Thiel, tied to the Bilderberg group. There's multiple connections overlapping with Google's Eric Schmidt. And at the same time, the interesting thing is Google's Eric Schmidt, let's talk about him now. Who's he supporting? He's supporting Kamala Harris, right? So they make it seem like they're on opposing sides, and maybe they are to some degree. Maybe they don't like Trump. Maybe he prefers Kamala. But at the end of the day, Eric Schmidt, this little guy here with no chin on screen, he is a steering committee member of the Bilderberg Group as well. So think about that. If you guys understand the importance of the Bilderberg Group, they're funding Harris and Biden. They're funding Donald Trump. Do you think it's going to fucking matter who you choose? And I have people telling me, well, Derrick, there's going to be slight differences. You know, you can't deny that the Republicans are better on some issues. Sure, they are. But if you're honest, if you're really honest, you'll also admit that the Democrats are better on some issues. I know that's hard for some of you people to accept, but this is part of the psyop. They can both be good on one issue or this issue or that issue, and then they're totally freaking batshit crazy on other issues. And at the end of the day, they're both statists who want to use government to enforce their agendas over your lives, right? So getting into these debates about lesser of two evils and, well, things might be slightly better than Trump, or maybe the technocracy will march forward slowly. Look, I get it. If that's your strategy, go for it. But don't buy into this idea that they're going to save you. At the very least, if you're going to vote for Trump as a, let's say, a defensive vote because you think that's going to stop the agenda or make it at least a little bit slower, I think you're wrong. I think it's silly. But sure, do that. But also download How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State and start learning about exit and build strategy, learning about agorism and counter economics, and start getting out of these systems before it's too late, before the digital IDs come that we were just talking about. Otherwise, you're going to be dependent on these slavery systems like you probably were during COVID 1984, because you sat around all freaking day telling yourself that Donald Trump was going to save you or that Kamala Harris was going to save you. Meanwhile, they're all sitting out back, popping corks and drinking together, laughing at you because you don't realize that they're funded by the Zionists through people like Sheldon Adelson and his wife and the freaking Bilderberg Group. Okay. So, all right. In this article, I pointed out how Reid Hoffman, who is also connected to Epstein, he was a billionaire co-founder of LinkedIn. He wrote a piece for the New York Times just earlier this month saying, in this moment, we need a leader who recognizes the innovation is key to economic prosperity, national security, and breakthrough progress on climate change and other pressing issues. So he called for Silicon Valley to, quote, get behind Kamala Harris. And well, some of the people are listening. You know, again, we've got this Silicon Valley, the Peter Thiel PayPal mafia on one side, they're going towards Trump, and then the other folks are going towards Harris, but you've got the obvious connections to the Bilderberg Group. Eric Schmidt, who, by the way, wrote a book called The Age of AI and Our Human Future with Henry Kissinger, who's the now deceased former Secretary of State and war criminal. That's the kind of company that Eric Schmidt keeps. And Eric Schmidt has been a longtime Democratic Party funder. He has donated to Republicans over the years, but most of the times he's donated to Democrats, including in 2020 and 2022. He donated millions of dollars to the Democratic Party. And he actually participated in a task force earlier this year that was specifically focused on how to help the Democrat establishment better understand how to win elections, specifically using AI, because this dude is a huge proponent of AI. And he, as I talked about earlier, remember, let's go back how we were talking about digital IDs a couple of moments ago, and these digital IDs rolling out and how these IDs might be used to help you access the internet and proving your who you are. Well, look, Eric Schmidt, Bilderberg Steering Committee member, he was involved in an event at the Aspen Institute in April with Hillary Clinton, by the way, talking about the threats of artificial intelligence posing to elections. So they're kind of playing this up. AI is going to impact the election in the same way they're claiming Iran's going to hack the election. And interestingly, Eric Schmidt also sits on the board of something called the Institute for Global Politics, which was founded at Columbia University. And Hillary Clinton is currently the faculty advisory board chair. And if you understand the history of technocracy, it goes back to Columbia University. But you've also got this swampiness, hanging out with Kissinger, hanging out with Clinton, et cetera. And Eric Schmidt warned that the problem of election misinformation is only going to get worse, potentially even for this election. And he basically said that we need to use blockchain technology to track content creation in an attempt to stop fake news. And as I talked about earlier, look, crypto, blockchain, it's a tool. It can be used by the psychopaths, but it can also be used like Odyssey. I'm streaming on Odyssey right now. That's a blockchain-based platform. It's censorship-free. So it's important to understand that. But Eric Schmidt, before he attended this meeting with Hillary Clinton, he also wrote a piece last, I think it was October, for MIT. And it was about how to fight election misinformation. And he detailed a 6-point plan of how we can fight election misinformation. And one of the first things he said was under a section called Verify Human Users, quote, we need to distinguish humans using social media from bots, holding both accountable if laws or policies are violated. And how do you think that's going to happen? Identify human users? Probably through these freaking digital driver's licenses or some form of digital IDs. That's the kind of stuff that Eric Schmidt is talking about. He's out there saying we need to support Harris and we need to protect the election from misinformation and we need to use AI to do it. He is also deeply, deeply tied into the Biden administration. He was the head of the U.S. National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence, also known as the AI Commission. And guess who appointed him as the chair? Donald Trump. He put him as the chair of the AI Commission in 2018. After it was created by Congress, and his chairship ended in the early 2021 in Joe Biden's administration, but he didn't go anywhere. After that, he deeply embedded himself into the Biden White House. Even though he's officially not in there, he's funding all kinds of startup companies, like one is known as Rebellion Defense, and this allows him to gain influence in the White House. In fact, I even found this 2021 report from the American Prospect, where they talked to different people within the White House that said that they sometimes, quote, jokingly call the Obama administration Google.gov, with more than 250 Google employees moving between government and the company throughout Obama's presidency. But it didn't stop with Obama. As I said, it continued under the Trump administration. It continues under the Biden administration. Eric Schmidt is also getting more and more deeply involved in the military intelligence complex. He's working with the Department of Defense, helping them upgrade their systems using artificial intelligence. He's working on drone programs. And like I said, the Project Maven, which was Google's project. You may remember a few years ago, Google employees walked out when they learned that Google was working to develop AI for drones that were going to be used by the military. Well, that was back in 2018. Nobody cares anymore, so they're still going forward with it, and it continues to operate. And guess who's funding it? Eric Schmidt and Peter Thiel. Wow, the connections just do not end. So this is the illusion of choice that we have been taught, my friends. Eric Schmidt over there on the Democrat side, steering committee member, friends with Peter Thiel. But we've got more. We've got more. Hold on. We're not done yet. The America's Frontier Fund. This is my latest article showing how these two jackasses are even more closely tied together. America's Frontier firm, the venture capital firm with ties to Peter Thiel and Eric Schmidt. I really want you guys to read this article. I don't want to go through the whole thing. I'm starting to get hungry and dinner's waiting on me. But I do want to get into this because, like I said, this just shows you more and more the incestuous relationship. And I don't think anybody's even heard of the America's Frontier Fund, at least not in our community. They describe themselves as the first investment platform committed to ensuring the U.S. remains the best place in the world for frontier technology, innovation, and investment returns. And so they basically say they're getting together a world-class board of directors and investors, scientists, technologists, and policy experts dedicated to their pro-America vision. Where have we heard that before? And they started something called the Frontier Fund 1, which is all about funding groups, companies that they think can help their agenda to protect and project America's national security. Now, the interesting thing about this is they describe themselves as a for-profit investment fund housed within a nonprofit organization. And this allows them to leverage their assets of a for-profit business. So think about this. Technically, they're like a nonprofit. So that means they don't have to pay taxes, right? And people can donate to them. But at the same time, Peter Thiel and Eric Schmidt and these other big tech guys who are also invested in all kinds of other tech companies, they get to use this fund to then reinvest in other companies that they're also invested in. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're double dipping. They've created this organization and then they can take that money, redirect. It's the same old thing that we've seen with these kinds of philanthropic outlets. But the bigger thing here is that they are actually working with the US government. So the idea is that they could take your money, taxpayer dollars, and then encourage the government. Oh, look, I think we should invest in this, this company over here. They look like they're doing great work, while Peter Thiel and Eric Schmidt are both invested in them and their friends are invested. You see what I'm saying? So at the very basic level, it's corruption, it's cronyism and things of that sort. The America's Frontier Fund is stacked with individuals tied to the U.S. military, including Michelle Flournoy, former Undersecretary of Defense under Obama, former Secretary of Defense Ash Carter, and H.R. McMaster, who's the U.S. National Security Advisor at the Trump White House. So you got Obama officials and Trump officials from the military intelligence complex. And it goes on from there. As I said, They, at the moment, this was 2 years ago, they hadn't received any money from the government when they first started, but they had put in a request with the Department of Commerce about a semiconductor fund. You know, semiconductors, of course, chips, these are the basis for everything that we're doing and for their future world they want to run. So they're expecting taxpayer dollars, because remember this, anytime they say government funds, the government has no money. The government doesn't make anything. They don't build anything. They steal from your pockets, and then they take it and give it to people like Peter Thiel and Eric Schmidt to build a freaking AI military industrial complex thing that they claim is going to help America keep American national security and all this kind of stuff. And then when you look at the board members, the people associated with the American Frontier Fund, again, both Eric Schmidt and Peter Thiel donated to the nonprofit that's part of this organization. Even though they're not on the board of directors, when you start looking at the people involved, you can see that this is their whole crew. So a guy named Jordan Blaychek is the president and CEO of America's Frontier Fund. He was previously vice president at Eric Schmidt's Schmidt Futures, which is a philanthropic outfit he created with his wife. Eric Braverman is on the board of directors, and until 2023, he was also the CEO at Schmidt Futures. He also formerly worked at the Clinton Foundation. And I mean, the shit just goes on and on. But there's even more scary connections here. In-Q-Tel. Those of you who know, you know. The In-Q-Tel is the CIA's venture capital firm. This is when the CIA says, hey, we want to invest in different companies, again, using taxpayer dollars or money that they've stolen from overthrowing other governments from other taxpayers in other parts of the world. They can go invest in companies. And as we know, the CIA invested in a company called Keyhole Inc. back in the day. And Keyhole Inc., what did they become? Google Earth, right? So a lot of times the CIA will invest in big companies or startup companies, and they'll give them their technology, and then all of a sudden it becomes something great. Like there's definitely some theories and some tangential evidence that the Department of Defense program known as LifeLog essentially became Facebook. And then we know that, again, Google Earth came from money from the CIA. Now, Eric Schmidt, he has a very close relationship with the In-Q-Tel. He's an investor and a chair of the company called Sandbox AQ, which is an AI company that received backing from In-Q-Tel in 2022. Said that Sandbox AQ would help sell its technology to the U.S. government. So there's just this back and forth of your money going from criminals and psychopaths to AI, big tech, military industrial complex. Peter Thiel's own company, Palantir Technologies, which is a private surveillance firm, they received 2 rounds of investment from In-Q-Tel, from the CIA, which were worth more than $2 million at the beginning. And according to a 2016 report by the Wall Street Journal, numerous individuals working for In-Q-Tel also have financial investments in the companies that are getting backed by the CIA. So I think I'm making my point here. I could go on showing you that Gilman Louis, who was previously the head of In-Q-Tel, he was also one of the 15 commissioners in the AI Commission with Eric Schmidt. He's working closely with Eric Schmidt on the America's Frontier Fund. As I said, Eric Schmidt has influenced the Obama, Trump, and Biden administrations. And now they're focusing on going international. I mean, this article covers more and more, but let me just wrap up with this final part here. I wrote, with technocrats like Eric Schmidt, Peter Thiel, and Gilman Louis involved in the funding and steering of America's fund, it is likely that the fund will be a tool to expand the interest of the U.S. military and intelligence networks. Armed with billions of dollars of taxpayer money, extensive connections to the aforementioned networks, and a technocratic worldview, we should expect to see the influence of the America's Frontier Fund for years to come. Unfortunately, the average American is too distracted and too divided to grapple with the reality that individuals with ties to the hidden predator class are, at a minimum, playing a role in the U.S. government's technological and military strategies. Now, I really highly encourage you to read these articles. America's Frontier Fund, the venture capital firm with ties to Peter Thiel and Eric Schmidt. What role will Eric Schmidt play in election 2024? The co-opting of Bitcoin Nashville, Peter Thiel, Donald Trump, and Rumble. I'm outlining a pretty big picture, and I know that this can maybe be overwhelming for some people or hard to understand, but it is important for you to dive into this. Let me go pull up my whole link on Sheldon Adelson, the Adelsons, and how Trump is being funded by these Israelis. Here, let me see. Adelson. I got it somewhere on my Telegram channel. Here we go. And also, as I pointed out earlier, if you weren't here, if you got in late, I showed you how RFK went on an apology tour for the Zionists whenever they accused him of being anti-Semitic. They're all in this together. RFK seems to be either ignorant or blind about the connections in the Bitcoin community that I outlined earlier. The fact that he is supporting Trump when he claimed to be fighting against the COVID shots, and Trump still won't say he was wrong about the vaccine. And so many people, I realized today, still don't, they make excuses for Trump. Trump launched Operation Warp Speed. Yes, it was a military project, but who put Moncef Slaoui at the head of it? Big pharma exec, Donald Trump did. And who gave Anthony Fauci an award on his last day in office? Donald Trump did. So if you're telling me Trump was, awake that whole time, but he turned around and gave Fauci an award, I think people are being ignorant. So it's a big swamp. And Musk, I don't think there's anything I could even say that's going to make people wake up to that, because the freaking fanboy stuff around Musk is off the charts. But let's start with this. His whole Starlink thing, he's participating and allowing the Ukraine-Russia war to continue by using Starlink. You can go back to him when he said, we'll coup whoever we want, because his whole projects, like the batteries he needs for his Tesla cars, they depend on lithium. And in Bolivia and other South American countries, they have lithium deposits. He doesn't care about that. He also is literally pushing the transhumanist agenda with freaking brain chips, and he's a transhumanist. Now, I have friends who are anarchists who are also transhumanists. They believe in a voluntary fashion, but they're not billionaires who are claiming to be about free speech while at the same time censoring people on Twitter. So this is, again, part of that great inversion that I talk about, this fake awakening, where so many people are like, yeah, we're sticking it to the libs. We got Twitter now, and we got Rumble. I didn't even really get into the Rumble connections in my previous article on Bitcoin, but they're there. There's a lot of shady people, all the people I mentioned, Howard Lutnick of Cantor Fitzgerald, Peter Thiel, et cetera, who are funding Rumble. And Rumble might be a free speech platform right now, but I wouldn't trust it in the long term. And this is what I call the great inversion. I would include people like not only Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson. If you don't know about Tucker Carlson, because so many people still have a blind spot for him, you need to go back and look at his father's connections. Look at his, allegedly, he tried out for the CIA, but he didn't make it. Allegedly, he just, he failed. So the connections are pretty prevalent. This is my article, What is the Great Inversion? Again, I encourage you to check it out if you're not familiar with it. If you haven't seen it, it's at theconsciousresistance.com. I get that some of you aren't going to buy into it. You aren't going to believe it. But if you're paying attention and you see what these people are, you judge them by their actions, not by their silly fucking words and the things they pretend to be, then you can see who they are. This is part of the false light. The obvious darkness is the Democrat progressive craziness. And now we're moving into this false light, this false awakening, what I call the great inversion. That is what's happening. And RFK Jr. is apparently a part of it now. He, as I said earlier, built up all this attention about he's going to fight the deep state. He's going to, he calling out Trump. Trump was talking shit about him. But now all of a sudden we put all that aside because of politics, right? And then I get people lecturing me about, Derrick, you can't be idealistic forever. You and your silly principles. Oh, my God. I think I'm okay. I'm okay sticking with my principles, even if it's just me and a few other people. I'd rather that than be a freaking sellout, selling people hopium because it makes you money off clicks and things like that. That's what a lot of the mainstream alternative media is about. So when you put together Donald Trump and his funding of Peter Thiel, which is coming, he's a Bilderberg Steering Committee member. And on the opposing side, you've got Kamala Harris, who's also a Bilderberg Steering Committee member, being supported by a Bilderberg Steering Committee member in the form of Eric Schmidt, as I just mentioned. Not to mention Alex Karp. He's another one, Alex Karp, who's also the co-founder of Palantir. He did an interview with the New York Times recently, and he said he's putting his support behind Kamala. Guess what? He's also a steering committee member of the Bilderberg Group. So you got two Bilderberg Steering Committee members on one side and others on the other side. Everybody's got shady connections going to the intelligence networks, collaborating with them. And at the most base level, if you don't want to believe there's a larger conspiracy, at the most base level, you can say these are rich people who are trying to get rich, and they're just investing in people that they think are going to help further their business interests. That still is not a good thing because they don't have our interest at heart. But we're being sold is this idea that the health freedom movement is waking up. We're finally going to win. The libertarians are uniting with the health freedom people, with the old school liberals, with the former Democrats and MAGA, and we're finally going to take them down. Meanwhile, look at this article here from New York Times. This is from, what was this? This was earlier this year, I believe. Yeah, June 2024. The pro-Israel donor with a $100 million plan to elect Trump. Miriam Adelson long operated in the shadow of her powerful husband, Sheldon Adelson. Now, after his death, she is playing in politics as a solo practitioner for the first time. Yep, she's back, and I guarantee if somebody looks into this, whatever she's got around her neck, it's probably a freaking secret society. Oh, she's receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom from 2018 from Trump. So Trump gave her the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Her husband, Sheldon Adelson, the big Zionist donors. These are the kind of people that are putting their money behind Trump. They're also putting their money into RFK. They're also putting their money behind Kamala. So you tell me how you're going to get something different by voting for people who are literally being funded by the same party. You tell me that that's the awakening, that we're finally winning, we're defeating the deep state, when the literal fucking deep state is funding them. Do you get that? Do you fucking understand? Go to thepyramidofpower.net. Watch all 14 episodes. Stay tuned for the last couple if you're not getting it yet, because we're going to show you who's at the top of the pyramid. And guess what? Not all the way at the top, but up there high, you see the Bilderberg Group. You see the Zionist lobby. Israel was created by the Rothschild family, funded by them. That whole fucking movement, which is allowing people to turn a blind eye to genocide, to death, to killing of people. No, it doesn't justify anything from Hamas or anything like that. And before somebody says that, but you are making excuses that you are allowing this system and these people to dehumanize you by participating in it, by supporting in it, and by making all the fucking excuses I've been hearing for the last 3 days every time I try to reach somebody.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.